So we are the throwing group. I'm Joel.
I'm Maddie.
Aaron.
I'm Mike. I'm Cole. Okay, so this is technically what we all want to strive for when we think of throwing. This is Aroldis Chapman. He's known as having pretty much the best arm kind of ever. He's been clocked. He's thrown the hardest pitch. It says 105 there, 106 miles an hour is what it's So what this is an example of, this is a great example of the complete mature stage, mastering every part of the mature stage. From getting into the loading position, from getting into the balance position, and then complete trunk rotation, creating torque, whip, and transfer from the power from the load foot to the landing foot and creating force above the landing foot.
The initial stage is the first stage of development when a new action is introduced to a kid or even an adult. And because this is like most of the kids' first time throwing, none of them really have the established correct form of how to throw. So the form that they use most of the time is just like trunk facing the person, and it's all the elbow, just straight to them, no trunk rotation, no movement of the feet, and there's a lot of just steps or like form that they use that is just not the best way to throw. And the best way to get kids out of the initial stage is to have support and just continually give them positive feedback, because they're always looking for like our gratitude, or they want to try and please us by, when they do make a good throw, we give them positive feedback and they get excited, so they want to do better with that. The first person we have throwing is Michaela, and here we can see some purposeless steps as she moves forward, and it's all trunk facing and all elbow, no trunk rotation at all. And she also takes steps back after she throws, because most of her momentum is pushing her forward, so to counterbalance that, she takes steps back, which is against like the correct form of throwing. Next, here we have Caleb in the initial stage, and here we see no movement at all in his trunk or his feet, so he's very stationless and just all elbow.
We taught you the other day on throwing? Yeah, throw it to Aaron. Show us what we taught you.
So just very stationary, and he don't move at all. The trunk is facing towards his target full time, and there's not much lower body helping to try and create any force. He's all upper body, elbow. Very initial stage. Oh yeah, and because he doesn't have established form, he changes up his form this time to just try and get the ball to the target, because the first form didn't work. As he threw, he released it so late that it just went to the floor. So this time he went underhand to try and get it to the target without hitting the floor. So initial stage, because he doesn't have like a correct established form that we eventually will teach him, which is we taught them a 4-step throwing stage. So first you start out as a T, and then the second step is you take a step with your leading foot, and then you rotate and throw, and then you stomp. And that's like that's just the, like, trying to get them out of the initial stage to get them towards the correct form of throwing.
So yeah, that was initial stage. I'm elementary stage. So elementary stage usually in children between the ages of 3 and 5. The child usually represents better movement and motion than the initial stage. Still has awkward movements. The arm doesn't go all the way back like it should in the mature stage. It still it goes behind the head, and they'll follow through and they'll take unnecessary steps, and they're still wobbly. They do start to retrieve some of the memory and data that we fed them in the beginning, and they apply it to that motion. So this is Grant throwing the ball at Mike. As you can see, he attempts to turn sideways into a sideways throwing motion. His arm goes back and his front arm kind of comes up a little bit to add some torque. If you look down at his feet, he incorporates a little front step and then a tiny little after step to stomp like we told him to. As you can see, it's still awkward. He's off balance when he lands. But his trunk does rotate a little bit at the end. This is Logan. He was probably one of the better throwers that we had. So, I don't know if you could hear, we're telling him 1, 2, 3, 4. So those are the steps that Aaron just explained. So 1, he starts out on the tee, does 1, steps, 2, throws 3, lands 4. I would say he's advanced stages in the elementary stage, almost the mature stage right here. He's getting a bunch of trunk rotation in. His actual catching arm follows through and swings to his side after he's done with his motion. You can play one more time. It swings down and gives him some momentum. And yeah, like I said, he's probably our closest right here to representing the mature stage.
Okay, so this is mature stage. This is really what we try to get these kids to work up to just over the first couple days. Mature stage usually starts with the children just being mechanically efficient, knowing kind of the movements and not being so kind of herky-jerky or off balance. It's more them understanding that you get into your low position and you're more fluent with it. Also, they're more coordinated. They start to understand that, like I said, it goes hand in hand with being efficient, but they start to understand that, okay, balance instead of just all over the place. They understand when they should be balanced, when they should be transferring weight and loading and everything. Also, all the elements are present, so meaning that they start with the initial T, like we said, which is the initial loading. And when they get here, they get this hand up to balance them. So that goes hand in hand with everything, of them being having control and then being in control of their body. So now they start with being in the low position, being balanced, getting the lead leg up, staying balanced, and then transferring, having trunk rotation, creating the power, and then landing on the drag foot, or landing on the lead foot and stomping with their drag foot. Okay, so this is Grant. If you notice with Grant, we started in the T. So the signs of mature stage is he's starting with his arm back. So he's getting it back in preparation. If you notice, up, he also has his elbow up, like I said. So that's creating the balance for him, so he could be in line with his target and balance, so he'll be able to throw the ball straight and balanced. Also, when he throws, if you notice, when he throws his elbow down, it's creating the torque. So what it's doing is forearms coming down, and what you do is the thumb is coming down so you can create the force. And if you notice, he's trying, but he's getting his drag foot to stomp at the end. You want him to get it all the way out here so he can transfer the weight. But if you notice, he's just a little bit short, so that phase is still a little bit in the elementary phase, but everything else is in the mature stage. Okay, so this is Logan. Logan initially was probably the best. He started with the most signs of the mature phase, meaning that he was loaded at first, and he was the best at transferring the weight, creating the torque, and landing. If you notice his foot, he's a little off balance at the end where he's landing, but he has so right here he's a little off balance, but he's creating the force to get his body through. But the great thing with Logan is the balance. If you look, he's up, he's loaded, he has the hand out, and he's balanced. But he's having a great transfer of his weight. So look, and then he lands. So it's a great transfer of his weight that's creating him and allowing him to throw straight and more on balance. And he's shifting his weight the best. But he was also the best at listening. So what we had him do is we had him do the 1, 2, 3, 4 steps. So 1, getting loaded in the tee, 2, throwing, 3, stepping, and then 4, stepping and landing. And he mastered that the best, and that's eventually why he ended up being the best in the mature stage. Also, one thing with the mature stage we noticed too with Grant is when we gave Grant the 1, 2, 3, 4 method, he struggled a little bit because a little bit was his attention span. He couldn't really comprehend it. So what we did with him is we gave him a task. We put up a circle on the fence and we said, okay, throw it into the circle. And he actually put everything in and threw it the right way. So 2 different kids, they learned 2 different ways, but they eventually mastered the mature stage. We just had to go about it different ways.
So this is we saw in age group, because all these kids are 3 and 4, they were all basically in the over-exclusive stage of their attention spans. This means that they're paying attention to only one stimulus at a time. Their brain can't handle multiple stimuli and they can't process that. This led to a lot of distraction, I'm sure as everyone noticed throughout the observation, where they would either not understand what you're saying because they're focused on one stimulus, or they'd get distracted and just completely give up on the goal. Other attention spans are over-inclusive, which you can see a little bit in sometimes, just like you can see the mature in some elementary, but for the most part it's mainly over-exclusive. Michaela, she was a young 3. She focused a lot more on the ball and the excitement that the other kids were having. If you can see Caleb and Grant, she's watching them as they're throwing the ball and the type of excitement they're having. But she's not really paying attention to what Cole's saying about how to throw the ball. She just wants to get into the actual throwing. When she does get to the throwing part, it's not good. So yeah, here she's being distracted by the other kids and seeing how much fun they're having. She wants to have the same type of fun, but doesn't want to take the steps to get there. Here's her again. She was paying attention to the striking group. I guess she had a friend over there, a little wave. And what Cole's saying is just not as important. And being a young 3, she's even less really developed, so she takes it with the wrong hand. And this was about after 10 minutes of working with her, so it's surprising that she even stayed that long. But you can tell that not much is being computed that Cole's saying. An example of a old 3 was Grant. He was a little bit better. He had been throwing for quite some time. Eventually he just gave up and decided that hitting was more interesting than this. So he just straight up bailed. And we had Elliot, who was a young 4. He is just so focused on the ball. He follows the ball and doesn't quite understand what the throwing aspect of it is. Whoa. Yeah. So he just he wants the ball in his hands. He likes to just hold on to it with both hands, not even throwing, just wanted to hold the ball. So he was very distracted most of the time. I think the thing that the problem with the attention span is that they would get so distracted by what else was happening, and also stimulus that don't matter. like the ball or the laughter, and that kind of stuff led to them just not learning the steps and just wanting to get to the final end product. We also saw quickness of learning difference. The young threes, it took 2 full days with reminders every single day, and by reminders, we were doing the 1, 2, 3, 4. We were also doing, even with Caleb and Grant, we would have to do stuff like reminding them to just do the T, or even to say like, okay, like which hand do you throw with, that kind of thing, because they weren't really getting it that quickly. Older threes, they took about a full 2 days, but they didn't really need reminders on the second and third day. They kind of got what we were trying to say, and some of them would come out there, we hand the ball, they put it in the right hand, and do the T without us having to explain or get them to that point. Hole 4, that's Logan. He really got it basically within the first day. We kind of had to work on him with a little bit of stuff, such as like the 1, 2, 3, 4s. But besides that, the second day he came out and was ready to go, put it in his hand, T, and went all the way through with like full trunk rotation and extension as well.
Okay, so we're going to start off with differences in age and gender. So this is Michaela. From our observations, it didn't seem, we couldn't quite like understand if there were a difference in gender, just because we didn't get a lot of girls that were interested in it, but there was definitely a difference in background and experience. So Grant had experience with throwing the ball in his backyard with his dad, which could also be a reason as to why he caught on to the steps easier and learned them quicker, while Logan was just older. So we believe that it was more so of a difference in age than actual gender. But Michaela had never thrown a ball before, and she wasn't very interested in throwing either, which probably didn't help her learning. So as we showed earlier, she doesn't seem very interested. She's looking and watching the other kids, but you can also tell by her form at the end that she's very much so in the initial stage, and I think we worked with her 2 or 3 times and she didn't really improve because she wasn't interested, or maybe because of her background. She didn't have as much experience as the other boys. So yeah, you obviously see she's in the initial stage. She doesn't have any trunk rotation and throws in the front plane of her body, like Aaron said. Okay, so this is where we really get to see the capability of understanding. Like Joel was saying, it mattered a lot with the age difference. The younger kids really needed the numbers and the steps to learn. We first initially tried to teach them just through verbal communication, like Cole was doing with Michaela on the first day, and we had a lot of the younger kids, so they struggled with learning it that way. Obviously, a lot of us in here are visual learners too. So Mikey and Cole would really like show them the T and the step and the drag and all that, and that's when they really started learning. Even in this video, you can see that Logan improves just by Mikey showing him the steps. So in this one, we would say he's most likely in the initial stage. Even though he has some steps, he still throws just on the front of his body. But as Mikey shows him and teaches him the numbers, Logan gets better and better. Just
Look,
over
count
time.
out 1, 2, let me hear it, okay?
Yeah, so once Joel tells him to count, he really gets it.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
So we went with verbal communication and then the steps without the numbers, which was just the T, the step, the throw, and then the landing step. And then once we added in numbers, they kind of got it quicker. This could have also been because Logan was an older 4, as Joel said, so he could have just caught on easier.
We're going to push. Remember, this comes this way. Okay?
So he's really trying to understand and get it down the correct way.
Throwing, 3, 4. But you're throwing, that's last. So you throw before you step. So like this. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, so he's even recalling the steps. He remembers that we need to have a T.
Just like that. Yep. Perfect. Yeah. Good job, buddy. You got this. We're four. Remember? We're gonna go walk.
Okay, so our last thing was observations involving development of self. So there's 3 categories that we learned in class. The first one is self-concept, which was just awareness of their attributes and their limitations in their movements. A lot of the kids that we worked with weren't really aware of their limitations. They thought they could do whatever we told them to. Obviously, some chose to, and some just wanted to stick with the original way they threw. The second category is self-esteem, which is just value, kind of self-image, which we didn't see a whole ton of in this age group. And the third one is self-confidence and belief, and we saw a lot of development in that stage, like Aaron mentioned, with the positive feedback and encouragement. But especially in this video, as you can see, that's Grant, and his mom is in the pink shirt in the back. And Dr. Anderson really suggested that we have Grant throw Grant throw because his mom was there. And at the end of the video, you can see that he looks to his mom for confidence and kind of like, look what I can do. We also had, I think the second day, as Logan was throwing, he would turn and look towards the teacher for confidence. So that was a really big thing in the kids that we worked with. They just really wanted to show others that they were improving, and it kind of motivated them even more.
So yeah, as you can see, spending just 3 days with these kids, you saw the videos. A lot of them started out in really bad initial stage. And towards the end, we got almost all the kids that we worked with to at least get the T and step and throw down into the elementary stage. And then even a couple, Grant and Logan, were able to reach mature stages. Yeah, it was really fun working with these kids, and we all really enjoyed it.
Okay, comments? So if I heard you correctly, you're just kind of saying, forget the girls.
I mean, they weren't, I don't think you should say forget the girls. They weren't as interested in throwing as other categories.
Okay, but is that their fault or your fault?
I
We
mean,
recruited them the same that we recruited boys.
Well, what does that tell you? They're not boys.
Okay.
So how could you have recruited girls differently than you recruit boys?
I guess we didn't really have incentives. The boys were cool with high fives and like good jobs, but we probably could have. We originally brought candy and then found out we couldn't use candy, so that was our bad. But I guess we could have seen as we had I think 3 girls overall, but only Michaela was the only one that came back multiple days. I think what we could have done is gotten specific incentives for girls. I think like stickers or something like that could have worked better because they might not have that desire just to throw.
Class, do you have any other comments on that issue? Do you have any suggestions for them if they just couldn't get the girls interested? It's kind of a big deal in that, like they say, women's brains are equal to men's, and yet we have far more men go into math and science than we do women, and they think it's because we don't recruit them. And so it's a good teaching moment to say we need to find out what motivates genders and or ethnic groups or cultural groups, and then try to figure it out. I think we could come up with something. Let's come up with some way where we could recruit